to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
We're back with episode 51 of the Leo Training Podcast. And this week's guest is Dr. Tim Simansky, aka the WOD DOC. Dr. Tim Simansky is an international lecturer, entrepreneur, strength coach, and sports chiropractor. He is most notably known for his involvement in the functional fitness community, where he has made a niche in the rehabilitation, injury prevention, and performance enhancement of functional fitness athletes. Dr. Simansky has been a member of the CrossFit Games Athlete Services at both the regional and games level since 2012. He has acted as the East Regional Co-Director of Athlete Services since 2015. Aside from his physical participation in CrossFit, Dr. Simansky maintains a constant virtual presence as the founder of the WODdoc.com. Through his involvement in WODdoc, Dr. Simansky has been honored with the opportunity to lecture both nationally and internationally. In addition to running his own platform, Dr. Tim Simansky is also an instructor for Rock Tape. We will discuss both Tim's work as a rehabilitation professional and his work for Rock Tape during this exclusive interview. So thank you for tuning in and listening, and let's roll to the brand new show. Dr. Tim Simansky, welcome to the Leo Training Podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy morning and travel schedule to come on to the show.
Joe, thanks for having me on. It was it's been an honor.
Yeah,
we've already been talking for about 25 minutes. So
no, it's all right. We're just wrapping back and forth and down in our daily coffee here, so making sure we're well fueled.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
I freshly grind every morning. That's my little known fact, huh?
Hey man, me too. Whole beans, grind them. Gotta have that. It's got to be rocket fuel. I need it to just if I could have an intravenous drip set up, I'd be golden.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely over caffeinated, overstimulated in the morning, right?
Yeah, but it helps you get the day started, so it's all good.
Right.
So I am very excited. We've had this one in the works. Actually, you and I started communications back in the spring, and it is now October 31st. So we've both been pretty busy individuals.
Yeah, like a good wine, sometimes you just have to let it sit, right?
That's right. So we've got some awesome topics in store. So before we kind of launch into the content portion, why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about your background, where you're from, and who you're currently teaching for and what you're currently doing.
Okay, that's a lot. Hopefully I could put it all together for you. So my background, I graduated from University of Scranton with a bachelor's degree in science. I originally was a pre-med student. I finished pre-med, and then I was going to go to medical school and did a shadowing residency program that just decided that medical school wasn't for me. I went through that whole painstaking process of MCATs and all that other type of stuff, and then I was like, oh man, I did this all for nothing, kind of. But I didn't. It was a learning experience, just like much everything is. And I decided to go to the chiropractic realm. Went to New York Chiropractic College in upstate New York and finished there in December 2009, and then went and continued through various different education processes in the chiropractic community, and got a diplomate in sports. I just kind of wanted to stay close to the sports realm, and so that's how I did it. Somewhere along the line there, I also became a CSCS, and I've done a lot of strength training with different people along the way. That was actually kind of one of the things that I did which would help pay bills and do all that other stuff. I was in the gym anyway. Coming from a wrestling background, you were pretty much either in the gym or in a wrestling room. So I resorted to that and bartending to make some college money, right?
There you go.
But I stayed along around that whole fitness world. When I graduated, I don't know, when I got into CrossFit, that's kind of like what I'm most known for now, as far as on the internet wise, is got into CrossFit kind of right after being a college wrestler. I think I was a freshman or a sophomore in grad school, and I got exposed to it, and I immediately hated it. I was like, no way am I doing that shit. Like, it's just not. I'm like, that's like wrestling practice without wrestling at the end of the week. I'm like, I'm not doing it. But then again, of course, like, you're young, and you think like, oh, well, it's May. I guess I'll start doing some of this high intensity stuff. Got to get the abs back for beach season, or something like that. So you'd start doing these different things. The next thing you knew, a whole group of people were doing it, and that was kind of my immersion into CrossFit. My focus, is that what you said? It was, oh wait, where else did you want me to talk about?
It's all right, man. You covered your background there, and then obviously you said you're working a lot with the CrossFit community and your platform. So WOD DOC, how that started, and then also your teaching, how you got involved with Rock Tape.
So all right, so I'll start with Rock Tape because that kind of piggybacks off of CrossFit. Rock Tape's a funny one. So I was a young practitioner working in North Jersey, and I was volunteering at all these different events, anyone that I basically could, to try to help get your name out. I worked for a pretty prominent sports doc at that time. Who since went our own separate ways and stuff like that. I think we just hit an expiration point on that relationship. But at that time, I was just going anywhere I could to volunteer, and the CrossFit Games was one of those places. And the first year I think I volunteered was 2013 at the CrossFit Games. 2012, 2013. I forget which one. No, I think it was 13 because they just started the online and then actually had regionals, I think, in 2012. I wasn't there the first year. In any case, they had two different tents there, right? They had a medical tent and like an athlete's tent in this area, and it started raining one day, and like everyone just crowded into the medical tent, and this one guy comes in and he's got a shaved head and he has a tattoo, like a Rock Tape tattoo right here, and me with no filter, I'm like, whoa, you must really like Rock Tape, like like that. And he's like, yeah, I own the company. I was like, shit. Because I kind of just like busted his tattoo just a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I own the company. I was like, well, that was stupid. And we kind of just left it at that. Like, it was like not like awkward silence, but it just kind of ended there, and the rain stopped and we went out and did our own thing. The next year, 2014, I met him again. And I was like, oh, hey, remember I was the guy that talked about your tattoo? And we started giggling about this and that. I ended up doing a couple more volunteering jobs because like that kind of like was like broke the ice, I guess. I did a couple more volunteering jobs for Rock Tape, and I met different people that were amongst the ranks there, and got invited to the Instructor Summit, I think in 2014. And since then, I've been teaching there on a regular basis, once to twice a month for Rock Tape. So I teach their various different courses on taping and functional movement, and now they have a Rock Blades course. Teach that as well, which is their instrument-assisted course. So that's my teaching stuff. I also, with the evolution of WOD DOC, have came out with my own course that I teach. Based off of more of a stabilization course. We're so focused on mobility, and one of the godfathers of the new region, or the new era, I should say, is obviously Kelly Starrett came out with the mobility one, and he was the first, right, without a doubt the first, and I think he did an amazing job at making people realize that they need to earn the positions that they're trying to get into, and a lot of times it's a mobility issue. But it's not his fault at all, because we all do this. Like whenever something comes out and it's the fad, then that's the answer to everything. And I guarantee you, he would even say this as well if you got to talk to him. Is like, people just run to that. Like everything was always a mobility issue then, because that was the channel that they saw, and that was the only answer that they had. So it was like everything, they were a hammer and everything was a nail type of thing.
Right.
So you had all these like unstable people, and you still continue to have all these unstable people that just run to mobility, right? And a lot of times they don't have mobility issues at all. They have motor control dysfunctions and deficits. So my course is called Why Mobility, not because I don't like mobility. We cover it. But I want people to be able to answer to give the answer of why they're doing a particular thing. When people came to me, and one of the most common things that people say is like, "Oh, hey doc, this hurts, and I've been doing this self-help remedy for 2 months, and it still hurts." I'm like, well, even if I wasn't a doctor, I would probably say maybe you should do something else.
Right.
2 months is a pretty long time to have zero results. And the more important question is why? Like, why are you doing that? And if I don't care whether their answer is even right or wrong. I care about their thought process. Like if they can answer that thought process, then I'm like, all right, cool. But a lot of times it's just like this blank stare, right? So that was the evolution of Why Mobility and how that came about. Which I should probably answer the question then of what WODdoc even is. Or how that came about. Should I talk about that?
No, for sure. No, I was just going to comment. I think that's great. I like the point you're making about having individuals think about the thought process. Like why do you think the answer is inherently a mobility solution, or is it a stability solution, and applying the appropriate exercises to try to get the result. And that's great, because that's the piece I think we need to focus on more and more, is the thought process, and how are we getting there? Why is this happening? Is it inherently a soft tissue mobility restriction in the joint capsule, or is it a stability motor control issue? And if so, where do we go? Where do we branch off from?
Yeah. And what we try to do is, like the course itself is divided into three things. So I talk about mobility, I talk about stability, and I talk about what I call functional symmetry, which is kind of my own phraseology, but functional symmetry meaning whatever activity or movement you're doing that's specific to your sport or whatever, we break apart those things, and we want to make sure that you can do them functionally identical between different sides of your body, whether it's front and back or right and left. Because what we find is that people have these large asymmetrical imbalances. Like if you were to take something like I'm going to stick to the CrossFit community, a pull-up versus a handstand push-up. I mean, they're relatively in the same plane. They're relatively close in range of motion, but you're going to see a huge difference for most people in their ability to perform them. If I ask you to do strict pull-ups versus strict push-ups, handstand push-ups, when ideally they should be pretty close to the same, right? The range of motion is pretty close. Everything else is pretty close. If anything, a pull-up has a larger range of motion. Now I get that there's mechanical differences and everything else like that, but I'm talking about a general statement as being similar to the same, right? So when you see somebody that's able to do 25 pull-ups and 3 handstand push-ups, that's not the same, right? So you need to be able to look at, if somebody has 20 and 20 or 25 and 20, of course you're not really going to scratch your head that much over that, but it's these large barriers. I find those very interesting, because even the most elite athletes out there, if they work on closing those gaps, they do one of two things. They lower their injury risk because they're basically becoming more symmetrical, more balanced, and at very minimum, they can improve in performance, because improved performance it comes with the territory of of being more symmetrical, comes with the territory of being more efficient, right? So those things are really, really interesting to me. Like push-ups versus a horizontal row is another one that I love this one. If you look at push-ups versus a horizontal row, because if you have somebody do a push-up, a lot of people that are functionally fit are in like that 50 to 100 range for guys. Girls are much lower, probably like that really good. It'd be 20 to 45 or something like that. And I'm taking these numbers off the classes that I taught, and I'm just kind of making them up. But I've had somebody have like 90 to 10.
Wow.
Push-ups versus horizontal rows, right? And that is huge.
Right.
So we're doing a sport that's, in our case, functional fitness, that's primarily back dominant. Yet you are able to do 90 push-ups and 10 horizontal ring rows at your body weight. That baffles me. And then we wonder why we have these shoulder injuries and these low back injuries and these, this whole posterior chain problem. But anyway, I could talk about that forever too.
That's great, man. I mean, that's a excellent point, because you're talking about that the functional symmetry. It's a massive strength imbalance there.
Huge.
From your pushing and pulling patterns. And is it going to be like perfect 50% like symmetrical? No, probably not. There's
Absolutely not.
But moving that needle where they're closer together, like you're talking about, you're going to be a much more balanced individual.
Right.
And that's exactly what I found. Like I think some of the success you can have is you can have some of those imbalances, and that's what makes you good. But it can also put you, like you said, at a high propensity for injury risk and breaking down. And when you take the time to address those, overall, you are much healthier and much stronger. So that's an excellent point, and I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like it's all about playing that injury lottery, so to speak. Which is like one of my weird, synonyms, or what's that word that you try mantras? What's that called? Like Mark Twain uses them and stuff
Metaphor?
like that. Yeah, I guess a metaphor. But I was thinking a pseudonym, right? A pseudonym, like when you have like
fake name,
fake names and stuff like that. But in any case, when I talk about like the injury lottery, since I just went off on this stupid tangent, when I talk about the injury lottery. Like you could play every day, right? Every single day and never win. Or you could play once and win the grand prize. Like that's the thing about the lottery. Right. So being perfectly symmetrical, does it guarantee that you won't get an injury? Absolutely not. And being as asymmetrically imbalanced as possible, like the worst case that you've ever seen, does it mean that you will get injured? Absolutely not.
Right.
Like you're talking about probabilities. And that just happens to be one of those that I don't want to win, right? I don't want to win the injury lottery.
Yeah, no, that's definitely me too. The healthier and happier I can be, the better off in the long run.
Right.
Okay, so from there, how did sort of the idea and the birth of WOD DOC happen?
Yeah, I feel like my life is a whole bunch of funny little stories, right? that need to be put into like a soap opera or a book. So WODdoc actually comes from almost like a gym joke. Like, so when I first started volunteering, I was also a CrossFit coach, and I was doing like seminars and like these in-house things to try to get like community awareness and all this other type of stuff. But when I got out of school, I was very overzealous, I guess. I'm like that very typical, new doctor that just everything had to be fixed and it all had to be done and everybody needed to be saved and like just all this stuff, right? So when I would run around in the CrossFit room and in class, I would be like that. I would be like doing everything, super hyper, all that type of stuff. As you could probably tell, I have crazy ADD as it is. I'm like hubcap squirrel, right? So like, even if I was in like just in the gym working out myself, I would if I saw somebody doing something I didn't like, I would like stop my workout and I'd go over and try to help them fix them. And it would like piss off the other coaches to a certain degree. Like they'd be like they called me Doc, and that was my like little nickname because being a doctor and whatnot. So that turned into like, oh hey, WOD DOC to the rescue, like like when. So that's kind of how it like WOD DOC kind of the name started. And the way that the birth of the channel happened was probably because of my mentor, who we get along horribly now. Like we don't like each other at all. And one of those big divides was CrossFit. Like he had this very uneducated opinion on CrossFit that was filled with all the very common stereotypical negative personas, right? And what I never understood was this came from a man that I held in such high regard because he was so educated, and he never once went into a CrossFit gym, never once experienced or even not participated, but never even experienced what CrossFit was. But yet he would tell me on a daily basis how we go into a gym and we do crazy exercises until we fall apart and puke on the floor and bleed together, and then we would walk outside and everyone would have this pact on not saying what we did. Like it was like this horrible tribe where all we did was kill each other and drink each other's puke and stuff like that, right? And it was seriously like this such uneducated viewpoint. I remember telling him this one time, like, listen, like I have never heard such an idiotic statement come out of such an educated man. Like, and I remember having that conversation, and it was like one of the first like real like bad talks that we had. And we would just banter all the time. So in any case, I realized that yes, some of the things that he said, although he would say them vindictively, were right. Like people were getting injured. I mean, obviously I was seeing injuries in CrossFit. Like that was the field that I was in. So instead of listening to his bullshit all the time, I decided that it was more about people never wanted to get hurt. It happened through ignorance, right? So nobody walks into a gym or any sport and says, oh, hey, I want to get hurt. So what I did is I decided to start spreading the knowledge that I was given. Like, I was like, okay, well, if it's about ignorance, and if I can educate, then that's what I'm going to do. And I went to school for a long time, and I had a lot of things that I decided I wanted to share. Some of them have been changed, and some of those viewpoints have been changed, but I decided like this is something that I want to do. So the project was originally called Workout of the Day Doctor. Like when the site first was put together, and obviously Workout of the Day Doctor just is a mouthful. So Workout of the Day got shortened to WOD, and Doctor got shortened to WODdoc Doc, and WODdoc was kind of formed. And Project 365, which if you look at any of those posts, they say P365. Project 365 was originally a commitment to myself. I said I wanted to post one video a day for a year, and I was like, this is something I'm going to commit to. And so it was more about me proving it to myself at first, like that I could do it every day for a year. And then by the time I got anywhere close to a year, I realized that I was never going to stop. And I think we're at 852 now.
Wow.
Today's 852. So every time we just try to expand and try to continue to add knowledge. And I bring on as many different varieties of people as I can, whether it's the typical sports mobility stability guys, or if it's sports psychology, or if it's just psychology in general, nutrition, sleep awareness, all like anything that I think I can relate to the functional fitness community. That's what I do. So we post we as in me. I say we because it sounds more intimidating, right? I post a video every single day on technique, mobility, stability, nutrition as it applies to the functional fitness community. Like normally it's between 3 and 5 minutes long, and every now and then we go over. And then I started doing like these podcasts, like little snippets, because there were certain things that I had more questions about. that people I wanted to talk to longer, that I knew 3 or 5 minutes just wouldn't do it. So I was like, hell, might as well do a podcast. Why not other people do it? I don't have a regular podcast, but I try to put out one a month at least. And they're more me fishing for answers. Like I want to learn more about it, so I talk to people, and a lot of people have a lot of things to say. So
that's awesome, man. That's what it's all about. It's about learning and helping people get better, and sharing the knowledge.
Yeah. I do have this saying that I was quoted in an article, and I never realized it was a saying until I wanted to make sure that I didn't like bastardize it. So I got interviewed, I think it was on WOD Talk magazine, and I said the only worthless knowledge is the knowledge that you don't share. And it was like they quoted me in it, and I read the article like before they put it out. I was like, oh man, I wonder if I just took somebody else's words when I said that. So I Googled it, and I was the only person that there was no Googled quotes that said the only worthless knowledge is knowledge you don't share. So I started putting it on my t-shirts and stuff like that. And I'm a true believer. That's literally what one of the things that make me continue every day. It's yeah, that's great. I have knowledge, and I don't have knowledge on some things, but I have a lot of knowledge on other things. And at the end of the day, it's in my head, right? So it's worthless if you don't share it with somebody. What is the point of having it? It's not like I'm an architect where if I build a house and I don't tell anybody, and I die, somebody can still come and live in that house. What is it worth? If I get hit by a car and die tomorrow, if I don't share anything, what are they going to do? They're going to open my brain up and download all the stuff that I've learned? They can't do that, right? So I get pleasure, and I think it's awesome that I share information that I've learned. And if I can make it, I've always been I grew up on a farm, right? I'm a farmer, and my parents, raised me and on a farm and stuff like that. So I've been a simple life. So I can communicate at a doctoral level, when I have to, but I don't like to talk like that because that's not me. So I've always taken a lot of pleasure at taking more complicated, material and being oh, this is how I talk. Because I curse a lot and definitely I'm definitely a more brash person. So it's I don't need to talk in anatomical, terms and whatnot. I'm on the inside of your knee. I'm the anterior, medial aspect behind. Come on, right. Nobody talks like that. So why are you trying to relate information like that?
Well, and I think that speaks, very highly to the success of the platform, because it's the information that you're putting out, people can relate to, and it's easy for them to consume it and understand it and digest it, because you're not making it this intimidating, scary thing. They don't need to have a formal degree or education in exercise science. Not that that's not a slam against those things. It's just.
No, there isn't. But somebody told me once that if you say a word that people don't know, they'll spend the next 9 seconds thinking about that word. Right. What that word is, right? So if I said something and I spoke very, very medically, and I said 5 words in a row that you had no idea what the hell were, then that means that the message that I try to get across in the next minute, you have no idea what I just said, because you might, if you're that person that goes ahead and reads it or watches it 5 times in a row and stops it and looks up a word, great. But you're 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000 that will do that. So why waste your time? Why not just get the message across? And like I said, the only worthless knowledge you don't share. So there's no sense of hiding it. There's no sense of making it more difficult to understand than it has to be. So whatever. That's my thing.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So you've so what would you say, 850, right? Or 860?
Yeah, so today is 852 days consecutively.
So
yeah.
you're in somewhere in year 3 for sure, right? Am I doing my math right?
Yeah.
365. So
70 would have been 2 years. So
yeah.
I'm in year 3. Yes.
Nice.
We're going to go for a couple thousand, I think. A couple thousand sounds like a good number. My most recent goal was 1,000, but that's 150 days away, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So maybe a couple thousand, 5,000 sounds like a good number, I guess. Maybe
Nice.
10 years. No, 10 years is 3,000. Yeah, maybe 5,000 would be a good life expectancy of WOD DOC.
Cool.
We'll see.
Cool.
We'll
man.
see what happens, right?
Awesome. That's great. Keep it up. So on that note, so the material you're putting out, like you said, you cover a wide area of topics, and you vary up your guests and who you have on and stuff. So what are some of the most common issues that you try to address, or injuries that you try to address for the CrossFit community?
So I know I spent all this time babbling about the stuff I talk about online, but I do treat people. I specialize in, treatment, diagnosis, assessment, and progression, rehabilitation of functional fitness athletes. So I do see people in New York and New Jersey. And I would say the most common injury by far, I mean, this is probably 3 or 4 to 1, is shoulders. And it happens for a number of different reasons, all including mobility and stability and motor control and functional asymmetries. They're all in there. All those categories are in there. But if you think about this and you put this all together, I'll start out by asking a question. What's the difference between CrossFit and just about every other sport that you've ever seen or participated in?
Well,
Are you on the spot? This is like the
No. That's a good question. I would say that there's a huge variety of movements, and they're using a lot of different, we'll say, tools. So the barbell, kettlebell, body weight, rings.
Sure, but so does a boot camp. All right, I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it has nothing to do with movements. Yes, you could find all those different movements in different activities. Maybe it's not as wide a variety or anything else. But the largest difference, the one that I think identifies CrossFit from others, except for the last 3 years, is that the majority of people start as adults. No other sport is like that. Okay. So if you think about it, if you played soccer, you played as a little kid. If you did this, every other sport that you've ever played, you at least had some training as a child. Now, the emergence of adolescence in CrossFit is definitely gaining, especially with the teenage group and all that other type of stuff. But that doesn't change the vast majority of people that do it, right? The vast majority of people that do it are these post, college. I've been in work for a couple of years, and now I'm starting to do something because CrossFit seems fun, and I see it on TV. And I want to get in shape because those guys look like, whatever, Ken dolls, right? So, and there's no denying it. They obviously do. They all look great, and so do the women and all that other type of stuff, and blah 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 blah. So it's this image that they put in their heads. But they're older, and they're not those guys, and they're deconditioned to a certain extent. And the ones that are even more dangerous are the ones that have a pretty good baseline athletic potential. They were college athletes and they took a couple of years off, but they're still very fit as compared to the general public, because these are people that push themselves even harder, right? Some people, if you're very deconditioned, you just don't have the ability to push yourself hard enough to hurt yourself. It's the people that are decently in shape that have the ability to overstress that machine. But in any case, unless you were a gymnast, a wrestler, a previous Olympic lifter, I can't think of any other sports. The last time you used your shoulders with any weight-bearing load on any regularity was when you crawled. All right? We don't do it. We're not for appendage athletes. All right? So as a child, you learned how to, to progress into this using my shoulders on an everyday basis as as like this way of movement and everything else, right? And then I became a bipedal creature, and that was it. That was it. Like, I didn't load the shoulder at all. And now, 30 years later, or 25 years later, or 40 years later, when you come into it, you haven't loaded your shoulder in 40 years, and you want to know why all of a sudden you got into CrossFit. And even if you're doing something safe, even if you're doing everything perfect, right? You're still doing something you haven't done in 40 years, right? So if you never sprinted in 40 years and you had perfect sprinting form, you're probably going to get hurt. Like, it's going to happen if you didn't done it in 40 years. And then do it 3 days a week after not doing it for 40 years, And you're like, oh, well, I just don't understand why my shoulder hurts. Well, because it's not prepared for it. Because it's just not there. It's not functionally ready to do the demands that you're asking it to do. So a lot of these people, they have to back up, and they don't. So you see this like type 2 shoulder impingements are they're like at every place. They're littered. They're littered on the floor of CrossFit gyms. But I think that they are getting a lot better. I think that coaches are becoming more educated, and I think that it is improving. But like anything that happens and explodes very quickly, there's going to be this, this peak of watered down, of watered down, whatever, of the watered down version of that actual potential. But yeah, shoulder injuries by far, 100%. Like no back injuries, knee injuries are probably more common than back injuries that I see.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a great point too. I mean, when you put it into perspective like that and look at how much they're under load in some of the lifts in a CrossFit class, and then think about how little time up until then you've been doing that, and it's like, well, duh.
Right. Like if you operated a crane once, 40 years ago, or like, so I always like to relate things to, so I'm a pilot, and I like on my spare time, it's one of the things I enjoy doing. But if I haven't flown a plane in 40 years, I would be scared. I'd be a little nervous to jump a plane and fly again.
Well, technology is not even going to be the same.
Right. But if it was the same plane, give me the same plane. I don't care. Like, give me the one I flew 40 years ago. I'm still going to be a little nervous. I'm going to be like, shit. Like, I might crash.
Yeah.
That's what these people are doing. They're crashing. It's like, yeah, you know how to use your shoulder, but you haven't used it. I mean, think about this. Think about how many people bring their bodies through full range of motion on a regular basis.
Oh,
like
you're talking a very
full range of motion.
Small
like
percentage.
It's crazy. It's crazy how many people don't. Like I love yoga. Like I love yoga. I don't do it a lot myself. But I think that I think the entire population, we should have a mandate. If I was president, everyone would do 5 minutes of yoga. 5 minutes of yoga every day. And that's nothing, right? Just to put your shoulders and your hips and your torso through like a full range of motion, like it would do miracles for people. Because you don't realize that you probably haven't lifted your arm all the way up over your head in 10 years. 10 years, like a decade.
Yeah, because they probably haven't even raised their hand in a classroom since they were in school.
Think about that, right? Or you haven't brought your hip through internal and external rotation in probably 10 years. It's crazy.
Which just goes back to, if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
See, that's like very simple. Like when you put it into perspective like that, it's like, again, it's like very transparent why we have those types of issues. Absolutely. And then those injuries, right?
Hey, you know what a cool thing is too, is ask, like go down the street, right? And just ask 10 people, when was the last time you sprinted as hard as you could? Like I will guarantee you'll get so many weird looks. Like you'll be like, no, honestly, like when was the last time you ran as fast as you could? Like, right. And people will tell you, I don't know, 15 years ago. Okay. Yeah. 15 years ago was the last time. if you ever like drive your car and like just gas it just a little bit, could you just imagine like if you never depressed the pedal past 3,000 RPMs for 15 years in your car, like why would you ever expect it to work past 3,000 RPMs?
Right.
It's
That's right.
just
That's a great point. Yeah. No, that's a great point. It's awesome. I love that because it's very clear. You know what I mean? And I love that you're working to address some of those issues and help educate people and put that content out there on the platform and everything. And hopefully people are encouraged to move more and have quality movement while they're doing that.
people that move more often and move more tend to move better.
Yeah.
That's just like like inherent. Like just think about it. Like look at like the people that you see that are like 80 years old and still very active. Like popping like 7 Cialis every day just so they could still have sex and stuff like that. Like those people, I give them a pat on the back. Like that's awesome. That's awesome that they even want to do that. Like just that much exercise and movement. Like I think it's great. And then there's the other people that are 55 and they are like they have like vegetation growing off their knees. Like like they're like grass.
Oh boy.
Because they move so little. And you look at the quality of life.
Right. It's not very good. It's not very good.
No.
Okay. So how, so I guess the next kind of jumping off point around that injury. So you see a whole host that's the biggest injury involving the shoulder. But are they mostly, is it a mixed bag in terms of like, is it generally a mobility, soft tissue, joint restriction, or do you have like an inherent stability issue where they can't control the range of motion that they do have?
So to give that answer, like just as like one versus the other would be an uneducated viewpoint. However, I will say that both of them happen. So when you go to medical school or chiropractic college or any of those other things where you have to write A or B or stuff like that, like that's what they're looking for. But in the real life, it's never really works like that. A lot of people are inherently unstable in their shoulders. Like they have zero scapular stability, right? So when I say scapular stability, I mean that if you think about the shoulder blade, right, those things in the back that attach to the rib cage, a lot of people don't understand that the arms aren't attached to the body, right? There's no bony attachment of the arms to your body. Right. Yes, your arm attaches into your shoulder blade, but the shoulder blade is only affixed to the rib cage by a muscular attachment, right? And then of course your collarbone and what we think about it as the clavicle and stuff like that kind of just floats, around the rest of the skeleton. And people don't put that together. So if you were to think about your shoulder blade as when it's stable, it's affixed to the rib cage, right? It's like it's sucked down there. And when it's not stable, it moves all around. And you were to give that into a very easy analogy to understand. If I was to take an excavator, which hopefully everyone understands what an excavator is, it's like one of those bulldozers that spin around in circles and have a big backhoe on it, right? And if you were to put that and bolt it into a concrete surface, right, and allow it to dig, very efficiently, it would be able to dig around, right? Because it's on this very stolid platform. But if you did the same thing, and you ever watch like Alaskan gold hunters and stuff like that, where they put the excavators on the boats, right? Same thing, same everything, but that excavator moves, it works much less efficiently because it's on a boat. It's on an unstable surface, right? So although the arm of the excavator works and functions perfectly fine, the platform at which it's trying to work off of is very weak and it moves all over the place, and they have all this hard time digging and stuff. Your arm is an excavator, right? And that's what it is. So here's the thing: is instability will inherently give you mobility issues. We don't like to be unstable, so we shorten our ranges of motion to areas in which we are more stable in, right? And if you think about this in, like, again, another analogy, if I was to have you walk across a line that was, on a crack on the ground, okay, you'd walk very quickly and probably pretty comfortably. If I was to put that same line on a tightrope 10 feet in the air, you'd walk very slowly and much less casually, very deliberately. Everything shortens. The whole world gets smaller for you, right? That's what happens when you're unstable, right? So if you are unstable, you restrict your range of motion to areas in which you're more stable. If you do that for a long enough period of time, guess what that is? That's adaptation, right? So you adapt to these shorter ranges of motion, and now you have a mobility restriction, right? So the question is like, oh yeah, are these people getting hurt because they don't have the range of motion? Yes. Are these people getting hurt because they aren't stable? Yes. So if that makes sense. Right. So that's where unfortunately that self-diagnosis, that treatment doesn't always work for people. The people that it does work for, awesome, great. You made it without coming into an office and getting treated by a professional. The people that are doing stuff over and over and over again and batting their head against the wall because they haven't figured it out. That's why people go to school for long periods of time, and that's why people are able to evaluate these things and help look at them because it's more complicated than just a yes or no answer. And people that give you the yes or no answer don't know what they're talking about. And I don't care if 1,000 people write in and say that I'm wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. Somebody that gives a simple yes or no answer is wrong. And I'm very adamant about that.
Yeah, it's not a black or white issue. It's usually very much an individualized case by case thing, and it depends on so many other variables. Like their history. Have they had previous injuries? What was their sports like that they played when they were younger? Like if somebody was a baseball player, their shoulder structure and their mechanics are going to be very different than somebody that wasn't playing because they were throwing and going through a way different and greater range of motion as a younger individual, and their bodies kind of adapted to that, and that can be reflected later on in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So history has a huge part about it, and you're absolutely right. And I think that's also one of the big factors of people nowadays with how we talk about shoulder injuries kind of is their history, their most recent history. Yes, they were a swimmer or a thrower or something else like that, but their most recent history is generally a sedentary lifestyle. I work behind a desk. I do all this. So much of it is postural distortion. Mm-hmm. Their history tells you postural distortion. Their appearance tells you postural distortion. And what you can do and what they can do, in an hour of the gym or an hour of the rehab facility, is minuscule in comparison to what they do 40 hours a week, right? So it's about understanding that acute history. Yes, long-term history has a lot to do with things as well, but acute history is what I think helps shape the future.
Awesome point. Man, you're just dropping the
2 cups of coffee.
Yeah, man.
2 cups of coffee.
It's just you're just letting it flow right now. Okay, so we'll kind of shift gears slightly. So one of the things we kind of talked about before we hopped on the recording and stuff was you were talking about kind of the sport of rowing, and then we were talking about rowing in CrossFit, right? And inherently, the goals for those two demographics, populations are going to be very different, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know necessarily if this is a question, more of just for us to rap about back and forth. But so because those goals are different, what's going to be important for a oars person, I'll be PC, is going to be much more, they're going to be focusing on
oars it. We'll call it.
So going faster, rowing well technically, whereas somebody in CrossFit, like you mentioned, it's almost a potentially at times a form of active rest.
Yeah.
So they're not going to care necessarily long term about, the fastest split. They want to be as efficient as they can be without burning up as much energy so that when they transition to the next exercise or lift, that they're not toast.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So unless it was a rowing specific only workout, then that's, I think the way we started is I asked you, I was like, how fast do you what's your stroke rate? Because just recently I did that thing with Sarah Hendershot, and I found out that I row way too fast. Way too slow. Like my stroke rate is like I don't know, 7 to 10 strokes below what what she wanted me to be at, and I was like 30 plus. Because honestly, to tell you the truth, we never really row above 2K. It's very, very seldom that I do that, unless it's for a training type of thing. Like there's very rarely when you're ever going to see like, oh, it's a 5K row.
Right.
And I understand the idea of, building aerobic endurance for, anaerobic, for anaerobic endurance, if that makes sense. Building aerobic endurance to get better anaerobically.
Yep. I got you.
Yeah. So, but in any case, so I'm like, so shit, my stroke rate should always be at like 30 or above. And I'm like, I don't think I ever in my life rode above 30 above. So, maybe like 100-meter sprints, and even like 100-meter sprints, I was probably at like 31 or 32, right?
Right.
So I was like, all right, so I'm going to try this stuff. I'm going to expose my body to it. So yesterday I went out and I rode at 30 to 31 minute on, minute off, and we were talking about like whether that would be beneficial or not, and then that's kind of like where we got over there. Which, by the way, I did want to talk about how I felt when I did that.
Yeah,
which is interesting. I was thinking about that afterwards. When I first did it, like my first 5 or 6 or 7 sets of 1 minute off, I had a definite pump in my legs and arms. Like there was this, this blood surge type thing. But after that, I was able to keep a very low heart rate, what I consider a low heart rate, because there wasn't this big effort that went into the row stroke. Now, granted, maybe I just wasn't rowing hard enough myself, because I was more focused on just keeping my stroke rate up. But I didn't find it to be as physically taxing, because it's kind of like this lighter stroke. It's not like I'm pulling as hard as I can type of thing. I don't know if I just didn't do it right, which is possible, or if that could be a strategy in the future for people that row. Like just keep your stroke rate up high. Don't necessarily pull on, don't be tugging on the rower so hard. Bring up your stroke rate, and maybe that will allow you to flush your system and, bring down your heart rate, which is a possibility.
No, I mean, that's a great point. So what you're touching on there is if you're doing a shorter piece, right, and you're going flat out, you're redlining it. It is a maximum effort type of thing, and you're going to be gassed at the end of that. But when you get to a point where technically you're efficient enough where you're not expending so much energy, you're not losing energy because it's biomechanically inefficient in the rowing stroke. But then you also kind of get into a rhythm where you can, I use the quotes around this word, you can kind of spin it, right? So you're sitting at a 28, 30, 32, and you're going hard. It's still a very hard effort, but you're able to get into a nice flow and kind of just sit at this split and this cadence and just drill the crap out of it, and just drill it and drill it and drill it. And you can repeat it for, like you said, you did 30 minutes total, minute on, minute off. So you did 15 minutes of hard work there.
I would like to say when I looked at it on video, it looked a lot easier than it felt. Have you ever done that? It didn't feel the way it looked. I was like, oh man, that doesn't look like I'm even moving that fast. It looks pretty easy. And I was like, I remember when I was doing it, yeah, this is
good.
Work.
That's what you want. That's what you want. Okay, so you were talking about it didn't look that hard when you look back at the video. And that's exactly, you should feel like it internally. It's a very hard effort, but it is sustainable. It's something you can do. And you get, part of it is you just have to spend time at the higher ratings to build that kind of neuromuscular coordination because you're moving much faster. So everything has to happen faster technically, right? You got to have that coordination, the sequencing for the rowing stroke down. So there's that learning curve. And then once you kind of get over that, then you can really dial it in, and it starts to kind of slow down a little bit in the sense that you feel like you have a little bit more time and you can really lay into the drive. Gotcha.
Well, hopefully that gets there. I'm only on day one of today will be day 2. I'm going to row again today. We'll try to get in like 4 days, 4 days a week at least.
Nice.
So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Did you want to chat about anything else on rowing before we kind of shifted to a different topic, or you get any questions?
I'm good. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the pop-up clinic in Kuwait that you do?
Yeah, we can if you want to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was interested. I don't know any of the background, so it'd be good for you to kind of preface the audience a bit with that. What it is, and it sounds like something you're very passionate about. So.
Yeah. All right. So about the stuff that I do in Kuwait, as an American, I think that I had all the same. So when I tell people like, oh yeah, I was just over in Kuwait for the last 6 weeks, I get these like looks, especially because I have a beard. They think I joined the Taliban and all those very, stereotypical type of comments. But what happened in Kuwait was just a weird chain of events that turned out to be something that was awesome. I through the seminar that I have, anybody can book it online. They just click on book a seminar and it sends me an email, and then we talk, and if it works out, it works out, and blah 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 blah. Right. So the first time that I got this email, it was from Osama in Kuwait, and I was like, what? I'm pretty open about. I did that. I looked at it. I thought it was like one of my friends, like just messing with me or something. So I just deleted the email. And like 2 weeks later, I get this email from Osama in Kuwait again, saying like they want to have a seminar out there. And I was like, all right, so I'll check into this. So I looked at the gym, and the gym was awesome looking. I did a little Facebook creeping, made sure that the people I talking to, and I had all those thoughts. And the first thing I want to say is Kuwait isn't anything like that. And I'm not saying that because I work there. I'm saying that because of all that shit that you read on the internet. It's not true. Like, it's not like that. It's not like women aren't repressed there, and there isn't landmines down the street, and there's a couple of certain cultural diversity things that are a little bit different. Like, it's a dry country, so so there's not alcohol and there's not nightclubs and stuff like that. But there's people socialize. They just do it in coffee shops and stuff like that. And there is some of a division of like men and women as far as like it's not a legal thing. It's just I think it's a culture thing, right? So if you're a Westerner and you walk around holding your girlfriend, your wife's hand, nobody looks at you funny or anything like that, just because they understand, like, oh, hey, that guy looks like he's not, an Arab, so like whatever, I'm not a Middle Eastern, like, so they're not like, they don't like, throw spitballs at you and stuff. It's very normal, and the interaction is very normal and stuff like that. So that aside, when I looked into it, I thought all those things that I read on the internet, right? So I was very hesitant about going, but when I went there, I had a really good time. And I taught a seminar while I was out there. And when I was out there, I taught a seminar, and after the seminar was done, somebody came up to me and they're like, listen, my mom, we understand you're a chiropractor, and my mom is, she hurt her neck and it's been hurt for a long period of time. And, could you take a look at it? And I was like, well, yeah, okay, I'll do it as a favor type of thing. Like, that's kind of what happened. And I had like one of those cases where I didn't do anything magical. I just like, sometimes you have this like magical result. Like, it wasn't anything that I don't do with other patients. I didn't give her this special treatment and this magic potion. She just responded awesome, right? So she comes in the next day to the gym where I was working out, and she's like, listen, I just want to thank you. and invite you to my house for dinner. Like, like I haven't been able to turn my neck to the left in like 9 years, right? And I was like,
Wow.
yeah. So it was great, and so I went to their house for dinner, and we had dinner, and next day, like 18 people wanted appointments. And I was like, I'm here like just teaching a seminar type of thing, but so we looked into the legalities of it and all that other type of stuff, and I started treating people in Kuwait. And since that time, which was last September, I think it was like last September, I've been over there 4 times, almost quarterly. And each time that trip gets a little bit longer. So we're looking at setting up the first chiropractic-based wellness center in Kuwait. We're trying to make that happen towards the first quarter of next year. And because chiropractic is something that doesn't exist in Kuwait, like it's not there.
Wow.
It's not like here, like where you can look in the phone book and find a chiropractor anyplace. There is physio, like what we call PT, they call physio. But it's just a difference in professions and whatnot. So physio and chiropractic based are both great things, and I think that there's room for both of them in the country, especially because there's no chiropractors. So it's an opportunity that we're looking into, and hopefully we can make it happen. I think a lot of people can benefit from it out there, and that's what we're trying to make happen.
Dude, that is really exciting. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Moving away from your family for years or a year is not the easiest thing to do either. So it's a double-edged sword. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
man.
you. I'll keep you up to date.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Please do. Okay. You ready to move into rapid fire?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, man. Cool.
I'm nervous. Hopefully.
No, you'll do great. You'll do great. Okay, here we go. First question.
Okay.
So, given your current knowledge level and all of your life experiences, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago?
Dang, that's like a deep question.
That's right, man. That's right.
Don't lose your virginity at such a young age. No, that was just a joke to make everyone laugh. What advice would I tell myself? I would tell myself. I hope that you edit that part out. I'm not sure if that sounded good. It made me just sound like a big slut. Sometimes you gotta laugh, though, right?
No, that's good.
So the advice that I would give myself is to trust the process. I think that at the young age when I started athletics, I was like everyone else. I knew everything, and I knew I couldn't take advice as well as I could nowadays. There is a process to everything, and it might not be the quickest process, but that doesn't mean that it's not the best process. Like the best process a lot of times isn't the quickest one. People, there are genetic freaks out there that become very good at one thing. But if you also look at those genetic freaks, they're also normally not there for a long period of time. Yeah. There's very few people like Nolan Ryan who was able to throw like 100 miles an hour for like 10 years. Like there's a lot of people that come out in the major leagues that can throw 100 miles an hour, but they last like a year or something like that, or 2 years, and initially whatever happens, there's an injury that happens very quickly in life. Not saying everyone's like Nolan Ryan, but man, that's always like such a deep question. A deep question would be try to like learn patience and learn the process and understand that there's a process, and that just doesn't go for like athletics. That goes for life.
I love
it.
Like
if I can tell myself to like understand that there's a process, yeah, that would be it. Yeah,
no, I totally. Yeah, I appreciate that right now because it's definitely it takes time to figure out, and it's sometimes it's hard to see it when you're like it's right in front of you, and like you don't get the perspective until you can like turn around and look at the past events.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just
was
Man,
good. That was good,
a lot of,
man.
there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that make you different, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Usually when I lay that one out there, it's a deep introspective.
Like the 2 seconds of silence where I just was like,
All right. This one's a lot easier, I promise. All right. What's your favorite strength training exercise?
squats, without a doubt. Favorite strength training exercise is squats. I think that a squat is the most functional movement that we own, with the exception of opposable thumbs, right, which separates us from apes,
Mm-hmm.
right? We could do this and apes can't, you know.
That's right.
Yeah, squatting by far. If I can only do one thing every day for the rest of my life as far as exercise, it would be a squat. Maybe a thruster, just because it adds like more upper extremity stuff into it. But a squat is functionally great for your hips. It's despite what people want to say and people that are ignorant to the idea that you can't squat past 90, these are all stupidity things and have been proven over and over again to be wrong. But it's also like a core stability thing. You ever like watch somebody that squats for a long period of time? Their abs are just as good as like somebody that does like ab specific exercises. Yeah, I think squats.
Awesome.
Or I also love like sled pushes. I think maybe like different variations of sled pushes. But again, what is that? It's a squat. It's a variation of a squat. The sled push is.
Yeah.
Your hip goes from a flex position to an extended position. Your knee goes from a flex position to an extended position. It's the same thing. It's a variation of a squat.
Nice. How has your training changed today, present day, compared to 10 years ago?
I do it smarter. Well, you have to realize I was a wrestler 10 years ago. So, and I was at a decently high level. So my volume was incredibly high in comparison to what it is now. I still am athletically fit, but I don't work out twice or three times a day. My goals have shifted in life to being the most athletically gifted to I want a career that will support a family and a house and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, if it's me staying late to see a patient, which means that I won't get to work out tonight, well, guess what? I'm going to stay late to see a patient versus 10 years ago, if it was me showing up to class 15 minutes late or 20 minutes late because I need to finish these last 3 sets, then it was me showing up late to class. So I think that my ideals have changed, and which have definitely changed the way that I work out and stuff like that. Which is funny though, because I'm a lot stronger. I'm a lot stronger than I was 10 years ago. A lot stronger.
Nice. Well,
but I also weigh 50 pounds more. I wrestled 141 in college.
Wow.
Well, so yeah, I'm about 45 pounds. I weigh like 185. So it's
yeah, man, you're a tank.
I don't think that I was ever a 41 pounder. I think that I just was like 3% body fat and sucked down to 141.
Oh, God bless you. God bless you.
I don't know what happened. Part of that, the nature of that sport. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a certain mindset to be able to do wrestling, for sure. It's tough. It's very tough. Have you ever had an injury, and if so, how did that injury change your training?
Yeah, so I shattered my elbow. This one here. Like if you notice, it doesn't go straight.
Yeah.
I get like every time I post videos that have me doing snatches or clean and jerks or push-ups or anything where my elbow has to straighten, I get people and trolls just knocking the shit out of what I do. And I'm like, yeah, I wish I could straighten it. So I actually had 2 injuries to it. One was a dirt bike accident, and one was like a farm related accident. Both times, like I broke it twice and had surgery on it in between that, which didn't help. And the result is what they call frozen elbow. It hasn't changed anything, to tell you the truth. I was a 2-sport athlete, or 2 to 4 sport athlete most of my life, and in high school through college, and I've never let it like stop anything, like I'll tell you right now, like overhead endurance is my worst activity because I can't lock out my arm. It feels like a locked out arm, but you're still resting on a semi bent arm, which doesn't give you that bony lock. So whatever. So yes, that I'm not going to be perfect on those things, but it's never stopped me.
That's good. That's good.
It's
good,
never
man.
really anything.
Yeah, so you're still able to do the things you want to do, even though you don't have a full range of motion through that elbow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they make injuries into excuses, and I've had it for such a long time that I haven't had time. Maybe it was an excuse for a short period of time, but I think I'm just past that. Like, I did this when I first did it when I think I was 13, I think, 1995. So, that's 20 years ago
Right.
for me. You can only feel sorry for yourself for where you realize that, my elbow's never going to straighten.
Right. Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Okay. So I'm either going to do with it what I can, or I guess video games are always my fallback thing. Actually, my fallback plan is to be a scuba instructor in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, that sounds nice.
That's my fallback plan.
There you go.
If I have to default on all my loans, my student loans, I'm just moving to getting residency in the British Virgin Islands and scuba instructor forever.
Soaking up the vitamin D on the beach.
Right.
There you go. All right. What's one thing that high school athletes should be doing more of to complement their training and their health?
Foundational strength training. The biggest thing that I see that happens incorrectly in high school sports is that the trainers and strength coaches, they take all these awesome seminars where they learn all these complicated movements, and these kids aren't ready for complicated movements because they don't have control of foundational movements and foundational strength. You have to realize we're in a declining population, whether people want to hear it or not. We're weaker, we're less agile, we're less coordinated because technology has brought the world to our fingertips, but at the expense of movement. Kids don't move anymore. Like, let's face it, kids are lazy, weak, and incoordinated, right? So the last time they played around and played tag on a jungle gym was in their dreams, right? So they don't own that ability. And now you have these kids coming out and they're playing soccer and they're doing all these other things. They don't have any foundational strength to add these complex coordinated movements onto. So I think the thing that's lacking is foundational strength, foundational coordination, and that is something that, like, you don't have to be complicated. I think man, I forget who it was. It was like Darian Yates or something. Like, said, like, how hard of a workout do you need? Enough to make a change. Like, it doesn't have to be difficult. It needs to be a stimulus which provides an adaptation, right? And we overcomplicate the hell out of everything. Like, just because you went to a seminar and you saw some Olympian do something crazy doesn't mean that your kids who are 7 years old, who don't know how to fall on their face without hurting themselves, need to have this crazy, dead bug cross ball extension on a balance beam. No. How about you teach them, very primitive movement patterns?
Right. Like a proper push-up?
Yeah, like a push-up, like a sit-up, like a suicide. Like these things are there's a reason why they were around for such long periods of time. Like, we thought suicides only were because as a punishment. Think about that. They teach lateral motion, change of direction, all these things like that we suck at as adolescents, especially nowadays when an iPhone is more important to us than anything else. Like, it's just, don't get me into my population. I get so upset about where America is going.
I know. I can feel the fire.
childhood diabetes and how there was no childhood diabetes 10 years ago, and now there's like 1,600 reported cases a year. That is disgusting.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not
no,
good.
It isn't.
All right, what's your best tip to improve recovery after a training session?
I'm a big lover in flushes, so to do a low level, low intensity 5 to 10 minute flush, I think is awesome. We live in this very self-gratifying, high intensity, high action world where, let's face it, if I tell you do 15 minutes of mobilization, or, stability drills at the end of a workout, you're already in your car going to work. So cool downs are important, especially as people age. And that would be my best recovery is some type of low level, low intensity exercise for the last 5 to 10 minutes of that session, right? I think it should be built into every CrossFit gym and everything else like that. It shouldn't just be like, okay, you did Fran, cool. That's the end of the day. Awesome. Have a good time, because flushing lactic acid and all that other type of stuff will and like all that metabolic exhaust, so to speak, will help you recover more than rolling out your thighs, because you're gonna do a shitty job doing it. Like you can't. It's hard to mess up like getting on a bike and riding for 5 minutes.
No, totally. That's good.
So,
all right, what's your favorite meal?
Favorite meal? If I only had one, or like
if it was your last meal, man.
I love steak. Steak. I would have steak every day. I'm a huge carnivore. Grew up on a farm. Yeah. I love everything that, I grew up hunting and fishing, and so any type of meat is for me.
Nice.
But macaroni and cheese would probably be like a very close second. If I was feeling like on death row and I kind of wanted like a little bit of that comfort food, I'd definitely go for some macaroni and cheese.
Nice.
But if I could only have like one thing forever, it would be steak. I couldn't give it up. I'd probably die of ketosis, but that's all right.
I love steak too. Happen. Yeah, I'm a big steak guy. All right, what's one book everyone should read? Any genre. Doesn't have to be related to our field.
What book? The most touching book, probably, man, that sticks out in my mind, I guess would have to be Unbreakable. Like, I know like that it doesn't have anything to do with health or fitness or anything else like that, but I think that guy's story is just, it's unimaginable. It's and the movie doesn't give it justice,
I didn't see the movie, but I read the book. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's I think everyone should be able to experience that book. I think it puts you through such a large variety, such a range of emotion. Like I'm not a very emotional person, like in general, but like I find myself like being happy and angry and crying and like heartache. It hits them all. I think the second part of that book, like after he's already back into the States and stuff like that, just starts all over again. It's almost like two different stories. Yeah. Probably why the movie didn't show any of that. It just stopped at when they were saved. But I think that was a whole another part of difficulty and torture, and I almost feel like when he came back, he was all back in like that prison camp all over again because he didn't know how to relate to society. I think that everyone should read that book.
That's a great book. Yeah, Louis Zamperini.
Yeah, person, like supposedly the first person to break a 4-minute mile, but it was never official because he did it like someplace else. He was an amazing runner.
Yeah, he was a fantastic runner. He went to the Olympics, right, in 36.
I forget all of his history, but I think he was the first like unofficial 4-minute mile, sub 4-minute mile. At least they could add that part to like for like theatrical portions, but supposedly.
Nice.
Supposedly.
Final question: who do you study or have you studied in your career to evolve, to get better?
Everyone. Everyone is the proper answer there. I don't have favorites. I think that an old lady on the street could teach me just as much as Stu McGill. Like, and that's not saying anything about Stu McGill or the old lady. That's simply saying that everyone has knowledge to share, and what you learn that might seem so unrelated to life from an old lady is just as important of that very specific finite thing that Stu McGill might teach me. Like, so one isn't better than the other. Knowledge is knowledge. Knowledge is power. It's the only thing that separates us as we evolve in life, right? And I love it from wherever I can get it from, and whoever will give it to me, and hopefully that never changes.
Awesome, man. I love that. That's great. Well, Tim, this has been a ton of fun. I'm so glad that we got to do it finally.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So just hang on the line. Let me give you a proper goodbye, and I'll wrap up the recording. I hope you enjoyed this brand new episode of the Leo Training Podcast. If you found the content valuable, please head on over to iTunes and drop in a 5-star review. Or please share it on your favorite social media network, such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Be sure to tune in next week with another brand new episode where I sit down with author Jack Carlson and we discuss his book, Rowing Blazers, and the historical ties it has into the sport of rowing.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.